Welcome to Begin, Build, Blossom, your business journey with Clarita, the podcast where we will discuss valuable insights, resources, and motivation to fuel your entrepreneurial spirit. Let's build a supportive community together. Subscribe now to Begin, Build, Blossom, and let's embark on your business journey. Good day. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Begin, Build, Blossom. And today we have with us Grant Atkinson. He is an attorney for creative entrepreneurs and the founder of Framework Law Group. I also reach out to him quite a bit for my own business. He helped me get started, and he has been guiding me so much throughout the whole process. And anybody who asks me for an attorney, I ask them to check out Grant. And he was referred to me by a very close friend who's also a client. And I will continue to use Grant as much as I can. Welcome, Grant. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Clarita. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. So the podcast, we have 3 segments. We will start with begin, then move on to build and blossom so that we can talk about your business journey. And we will then close out and call it a day. But I'm just so happy to have you with us. To start off, though, I would like to ask you a question about your childhood and how it compares to now. If we can put all of that in one word you would use to describe yourself now, and one word you would have used to describe yourself as a child.
Interesting. I mean, a parallel that I could put out there is I think I've always had a bit of eagerness and enthusiasm. I remember as a young kid always daydreaming and romanticizing what the future was going to look like. And that has not changed, I think. To this day, my wife and I are the same. We are daydreamers. We're constantly coming up with new ideas and ambitions. And as a kid, it was just in your head. But now we're adults and we have the capabilities of actually bringing some of these ideas to life. So I think, there's always been a certain enthusiasm for going out and finding what magic and romance in the world we can find.
Oh, that's lovely. I love to hear that. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. And we will continue with a section we call rapid fire. So I will ask you a few questions to get to know you a little better. But we call it rapid fire. But if you want to expound on anything, please feel free to do so. So let's get started. What is the name of your business and what do you do?
My business is Framework Law Group. I am an attorney for creative entrepreneurs. So I help entrepreneurs get all of their initial legal foundations together, like setting up their LLCs or corporations, getting their contracts together, trademarking their brand name. And then as they grow and they are entering into new deals and having expansions, I help them navigate all of those components as well.
Great, thank you. And how long have you been in business?
It has been 10 years now. 10 years ago, I was kind of a fresh green attorney. I had my first law job in downtown LA, working at a litigation firm. Every single day, I was on the phone with opposing counsel and clients who were, navigating some dispute they were trying to overcome. And being in that fight day in and day out for all this time was not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be helping out with my creative peers. So I left that job. I filed articles of incorporation for my own law firm. And then I set out on my own entrepreneur journey to build my business from scratch. So I know firsthand it's a lot to build your own business.
Yes, and I'm so glad you made that shift because I'm very, very grateful to have you. And I gather you full time based on what you just said.
Yeah, so Framework Law is my full-time business that pays the bills, pays the mortgage. My wife and I are serial entrepreneurs, so we do have a few other side projects that we've worked on. We just opened up a little shop in our mountain town. My wife sells her herbal teas there. Right now she's teaching a nature school. She has entrepreneur groups that come in the evening, so it's kind of like a little retail shop and event space. And I've also worked in some tech projects as well on the side. So we've got sometimes too many businesses going on at the same time, but we like to keep it interesting.
Okay, that sounds lovely. I would love to visit that the place you just opened. So maybe one day I just might do that. And what is one book you would recommend that we read?
I mean, one of my favorite mindfulness books. I want to get the title right. It's I think wherever you go, there you are. I'm very into like mindfulness, self reflection, self growth, and so just having kind of a mindful focus on my journey has always been important. So I think the book is called Wherever You Go, There You Are, and it's a great book full of little tidbits of mindfulness.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So I know you mentioned that you have several other businesses, but before you even started your first business, do you remember the first time you actually thought about becoming an entrepreneur?
There's always been a bit of entrepreneurship in me. In high school, I had a punk band and I built a website with the capabilities that we had in the early 2000s of building a website. I booked shows for us in town. So there's always been a bit of a drive to like build something, innovate something, and go out there. And I didn't think I was going to launch my own law practice fresh out of law school. I figured I would be in the workforce for a while. But after my first few jobs, the way I saw law being practiced was not the way that I wanted to practice law. I found it to be very intimidating, expensive. Not to say that every lawyer is out there trying to shark clients, but I saw, the recommendations that clients were receiving were often to benefit the pockets of attorneys, not necessarily to be
Mm,
the most efficient and practical for the client. And at the same time, I was seeing all these creative businesses blossoming around LA, young entrepreneurs starting something fresh. And I'm like, these people aren't going to go pay tens of thousands of dollars to take the right legal steps. I would love to help them at an accessible rate, walk them through the steps that they need to be taking. So I started daydreaming about what that would look like. And as soon as that idea got planted in my head, it was hard not to follow through with it.
nice. And I will say from the very first call that I had with you, you spoke to me like in a way I could understand. You took your time, you were very patient, very understanding. So I will say that the experience has been amazing. So I definitely encourage people to give you a call.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. And how did you go about actually starting the business once you decided to go that way?
Yeah, so there was a few steps. One was just kind of the general marketing steps. I put up a Squarespace webpage so people could learn about me and my offerings. I printed up business cards and I was networking. I think a big part of my business was to build community around it. You can market, you can post on social media, you can write blogs. There's a lot of ways to market, but to me, I've always found building community to be the most effective way. I think people resonate the most when they have a one-on-one positive experience with you. So for me, that was teaching legal workshops at co-working spaces, creative office buildings, events, and building community with creative entrepreneurs, always out there just to be a resource, to give information. I wasn't like soliciting my legal services, I was just sharing knowledge. And doing that enough, week after week, people do start coming and asking for support. Obviously, every business is different and different approaches will work. But for me, it was all about community building. If you want, I can briefly get into like the legal steps that people might want to think about.
Yes, that actually would have been my next question. So yes, please, that would be great.
Great. So, as far as structuring the legal components of the business, there's really just three basic things that you should be thinking about. One is to register your business. Almost every single business needs at least a few basic licenses and permits, which often include a business license with the city, maybe a seller's permit if you're selling physical products, a tax ID number with the IRS. And then there can also be some perks to registering an LLC or corporation. If you take that added step, then you're typically not personally liable for your business. So if for some reason what you're doing with your business causes a lawsuit, someone's coming after you for damages, if you are a sole proprietor and you're doing business as an individual without an LLC or corporation, then you can end up personally on the hook for those debts or damages. But if you have an LLC or corporation, then typically those liabilities are just connected to that separate entity. So you yourself are not personally liable. So that can be a helpful step. And also with an LLC or corporation, you have more taxation options. If your accountant recommends that you be taxed as an S Corp or a C Corp or whatever, you're going to have more flexibility to do that with an LLC or corporation than as a sole proprietor. So step one, register your business, whether that's just a few basic licenses and permits or also setting up a separate entity. Two, you might want to protect your brand identity. If you've got a business name that you want to own and make sure that other people are not stealing from you or using a confusingly similar name in connection with similar offerings, you can trademark your business name and own your brand identity. Also, if you have any original creative content like an e-course or a book or other writings or videos, you can copyright that content to make sure that you own your original creative content. So the second step is just to make sure that you take the appropriate steps to protect your business's assets, which might include your name, your original content. And then lastly, almost every single business would benefit from having the right contracts for their day-to-day operations. And those contracts might include a client services agreement if you are servicing clients. It might include worker agreements if you have people working for you, a partner agreement if you've got a business partner. So those are the three main steps. Register your business, protect your intellectual property, get the right day-to-day contract forms together. And a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, forego some of those steps and might be focused more on the marketing, the business development. There are so many different things that you need to think about. Legal is probably the last thing on your mind. It might feel inaccessible and overwhelming, but it's truly not that complicated to take care of those three basic steps.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that's one thing I'm seeing. Like being able to speak with you makes a huge difference because it could be intimidating if you're looking at probably one of the more traditional law firms, if I can say put it that way. But I feel like speaking with you, the one-on-one, all of that really helps a lot. And I know you mentioned setting up an LLC. One of the questions I get a lot from professionals who have licenses is how do I choose between PC or LLC? Or even sometimes, why would I not become just a sole proprietor? But you touched on that already. But
Mhm.
maybe we can focus a little bit on the PC as opposed to LLC.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are a professional providing licensed services, like if you are a CPA, a lawyer, a registered dietitian, any other profession where you need to have a license to perform your services, you can do that as a sole proprietor with your right license with the state. Or if you want to set up a separate entity because you want to make an S Corp election or to cut down on your personal liability, then the states typically have special business entities that are dedicated to providing those professional services. Most states have professional corporations. So, for example, my law firm is a professional corporation taxed as an S Corp. I am not allowed in California to set up an LLC to provide legal services because the LLC is not authorized to provide professionally licensed services. Some states do have professional LLCs. So, all that to say, if you are a licensed professional and you are planning on setting up a separate entity to offer your services through that entity, typically it needs to be some type of professional entity, either a professional corporation or an professional LLC, depending what's allowed in your state.
Thank you so much for that. And in terms of contracts, some people would probably get a contract from online
Mm-hmm.
or probably use somebody else's contract. So why should they reach out to you instead to get them to prepare that contract for them?
Yeah, for sure. So I find when people try to DIY their legal, there's usually some missing steps. I would not try to DIY my own tax returns, for example. I would absolutely mess that up. So when clients share with me the contract that they pieced together off the internet or typed up themselves, it might include a few of the basics like their rates or their services, but it's often missing a lot of the nuts and bolts that go into a solid contract. And if you go to an online template shop, you might download an okay template, but it may or may not be the right template for your specific business. I think with contracts in particular, it is really helpful to talk with a professional, figure out exactly which form you need, and then make sure that you know how to use that form. So with my practice, I have a contracts bundle where basically my entire library of templates is available. It's like a pharmacy. So you can come in, tell me what your business is about, what types of activities you have. Do you have a podcast? Do you have client services? Whatever. I will pull off whatever contract forms you need. I will fill them out for you. I will walk you through how to use them. That way, you know that you have the right templates, you know how to use them, and then I'm there to help answer questions while you are using them. So that's one of our offerings is a contracts bundle just to make sure you've got all those templates squared away. It's not rocket science, but you just want to get it right.
That is so important, getting it right. I did get a lot of my contracts through you, and I'm really glad that I did, because I have a level of confidence that I probably would not have hadn't I worked with you on that. So going back to the business itself, can you give us the story behind the name of your business?
Yeah, Framework Law Group. So when I was coming up with this idea of this law firm that was going to be dedicated to creative entrepreneurs, I was brainstorming names. And I think often when I'm coming up with a business name, I'll go to a thesaurus and I'll start typing in like various words that resonate with my brands. And I look at different words. And I think I was focused on like foundations. I wanted to help creative entrepreneurs build their legal foundations. And one of the words that came up was framework, which is a type of foundation. And also, I liked the imagery of like the spotlight of something that you would frame, something that you're proud of. So those two implications together resonated with me, and that became the name of the law firm.
Yeah, I love it. I really love it. And how did you get your very first clients? I was listening to one of your podcast episodes, and I know you mentioned you had attended an event, and that goes back to you and being social. It sounded like you were very, very much involved in the community. Maybe
Mhm.
you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So finding my first real client was not easy. I think I filed my corporation in June. And I don't think I had my first paying client until maybe like August or September, which just a few months. But when you're in that and you are no longer getting a salary from a job, you're thirsty for that first client. And I had a lot of great conversations with a lot of great people. A lot of people were like, "Yeah, I'd love to, work with you," but they weren't quick to sign. But I just kept doing what I was doing, which was going to these events, teaching workshops, and eventually one of those conversations turned into an actual client. And then that client helped refer me to other clients, more spaces. And as you start building up trust and momentum in your community, your business can snowball from there. So it was, a many month journey. There was a lot of hardship and doubt going through that at the time, but eventually it landed. And then we just continued doing what worked.
And how did that feel between June and August, knowing that you don't have what we call a typical job, you don't have your first clients yet, but you're enjoying being out in the community. But tell us a little bit more about that month. Well, not month, the 2 months there.
It was tough. I took a part time contract job doing doc review, which is when there's a litigation and there's all this discovery and there's a million legal documents. They hire attorneys to come in and help just sort through the documents, find what's relevant, find the smoking gun. So I did that maybe 20 hours a week to make sure that I could still pay my rent. So I wasn't like starving on the streets. And during that time, friends, family, they're like, "Hey, Grant, you've been trying this for a bit. Maybe it's time you go and get a real job." But I said no. Like, I'm very confident this is what I want to do. The conversations I'm having with people, even though they're not paying me yet, they are enthusiastic about what I'm doing. So I believe that this is going to work. So I'm going to keep doing it. So I think there was some doubt from others. I never felt any doubt myself. There were other fears, like there's imposter syndrome, which we hear a lot about in the entrepreneur space. These
Right.
other titans in their field doing these great things, and you're coming to step into that place, just little old you, and it can feel scary to take that level
Mhm.
of that position in the world. So certainly that was a fear. In addition, like I was a new attorney at the time, and when I was talking with people, they would sometimes present me with legal issues that I had never heard of, and I didn't know the full scope of my practice. I'm like, well, I know I do this. I don't know if I do that. Fortunately, I had some other colleagues and advisors who've been practicing law for 10 years already. So I would have the conversation with the client and I'd say, very interesting. Let me get back to you with some better answers. So I'd talk to my colleague. They would come in and they would help guide us through the process. So they would make sure that the client's legal was taken care of. And some of those advisors came on and were part of framework for a period of time. And that helped me deliver 10-year experienced lawyer services to my clients while learning in my own practice. So it was kind of a nice hybrid of not having a W-2 job where I was working for someone else, but at the same time, having that type of guided experience while I built my own practice.
Great. And I find that very interesting because that is where I'm at in my business right now. And
Mhm.
when you mentioned bringing in more experienced people to help you, did they interact with the clients directly or did they work mostly behind the scenes? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, it was my business. I would talk with these attorneys behind the scenes. They would give me the advice so I could come back and do things correctly. They would look over my work product, and people were often enthusiastic to help. If you talk with some other professional who's experienced in your field and you ask them, "Hey, I'm, dipping my toes in here. I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I would love to learn from you." They're usually happy to help. And with some of these projects, I needed a bit more of their time, so I would offer to share fees with them. So I was compensating them in some scenarios. And then as we grew and we were getting more clients, some of these other attorneys did come in to be co founders of the business. They were working with clients directly. Over time, our cast of characters changed and things evolved. So they're not all still with the firm today, but it was a great season of working together.
And you mentioned workshops. I would actually love to teach more workshops in the future. So I would love to know how you found those workshops, how you build the confidence to actually teach and pass on that knowledge, and just the whole experience around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, similarly to how it was easy to ask for help, when I would go to these co working spaces and say, "Hey, how would you guys like a free legal workshop over lunch for your members?" It was a pretty easy sell most of the time.
Mm,
These are co-working spaces trying to build their own communities, trying to build their own value. If some attorney or other professional wants to come in and share knowledge with their community, that's often an easy yes for them. So I was going out, making all those contacts. Not everyone is going to respond, but I think if you're persistent about it, you can find your foot in the door in a lot of places. And then public speaking and the nerves around that, I still have nerves. Like waking up today, I was like, all right, we got some podcasts today. I need to like stretch and exercise, drink some water, do some breath work. I don't know. It doesn't go away. Obviously, over time, you can get more experience, more comfortable public speaking with practice. But I mean, you're doing it right now. You're hosting a podcast, so I think you'll do great.
thank you so much. And that takes us nicely to our building segment.
Yeah.
We talked about how you got your first client. How did you continue to bring in clients? I know you mentioned that people refer you to others. What other ways did you bring in new clients?
Yeah, so the most effective ways in the early years were teaching those workshops. And I'll say that when I was teaching those workshops, it wasn't like I would show up to a crowded room of 50 people. Often there was just a few people, sometimes one person, sometimes no one. And that could be discouraging if you're going around and you're putting in all this effort. But to me, every single time I got my foot in the door or connected with one person, that was still a step forward. So I just kept doing that. After a few years, we had enough clientele, we were getting enough word of mouth referrals that we didn't need to teach as many workshops anymore. So I think after around year 4 or 5, the marketing efforts quieted, and I kind of just rode on what we were currently building, which was a great community of clients and the referrals that came from them. In recent years, it's been a decade now. I've been doing this. I'm always interested in innovating and expanding. Our team has grown a bit. I have an associate attorney. I have a few people helping out with marketing. We are back on the road again, teaching workshops. We're teaching them at co-working spaces. We're doing online podcasts. And the spirit there is to get a broader reach. I've developed some new offerings. I've leveraged technology to make a lot of what I do simpler, easier, and faster. And that allows me to deliver that value to more people. So we're ready for the next phase of evolution after a decade. So mostly turning back to the tried and true strategies of the building community, teaching workshops, connecting one on one. I am playing a bit more with social media. I never really got like that many quality clients off of Instagram, but we've
Mm,
tried some new approaches that are a little bit more personal. We're engaging more with people. We're building more trust in that space, offering more educational content, and I think we are getting some more of that reach that we get from the community building. So for me, it's the one-on-one networking, the events, podcasts, some social media, and then referrals are still often producing some of the best clients because you're working with people that are high up in their business, they're doing a great job, they have a big following, and the people they're associating with are also of a similar caliber. So you can get a lot of great clients from word of
Great, great. And you've been in business for about 10 years now. So I know it was a bold move to start your business.
mouth.
And can you tell us maybe one of the other bold moves you think you've made during your 10 years and one that you're looking to make now that, past the 10-year mark?
Yeah, there's been a lot of boldness, sometimes too much boldness, maybe. I
Hmm.
think right now I am very much in the trenches of another entrepreneur journey. So, just to talk briefly about that, when AI blossomed in January of last year, I was immediately very intrigued by it and interested in how I could use that for my business to help streamline things. And one of the areas where I wanted to use it was to help with certain legal drafting. As trademark attorneys, when we file a trademark, if it gets rejected, you have an opportunity to try to overcome the rejection. So if the USPTO says your client can't register this trademark, there's an existing trademark that conflicts with it, we are rejecting your application, you can submit arguments to try to overcome that rejection. And it's kind of a lengthy drafting process. You need to be citing case law, drafting all these arguments. It's a time consuming process. And I tried to use ChatGPT to help with these responses, and it did not do a good job at all. So I contacted my tech friend and said, hey, do you think we could develop AI that could actually prepare viable responses to these office actions? And he said, well, let's give it a try. So we embarked on this journey. And at first, it was just kind of a minor ish investment over a few months to explore the idea. But then once we got to the point where we could see, like, okay, we can make this work, but it is going to require a substantial amount of money that I did not have. So then I needed to go out and start pitching this idea to investors, which I had never done before. I was out of my comfort zone. And I found myself on weekly Zoom calls pitching to investors all over the world, trying to sell them that this is a really good product. People are going to be enthusiastic about this. And I was able to raise just enough money to develop the beta prototype. And along the way, I was also investing more money of my own than I ever thought I'd be putting into something like this, which is a little bit terrifying. But I had confidence that, again, this is a good product. I was speaking with trademark attorneys. This was something that they wanted to use and build. And in September of last year, we had our first working prototype. I used it myself and beat a trademark rejection with it. So I said, okay, this thing can actually work. We onboarded about 50 trademark attorneys who were testing it, finding the flaws, finding the kinks. At the beginning of this year, we started onboarding our first paid members, so people on membership. And as of today, we've got this great platform. We've got a dozen or so paid members on the platform and a lot of other attorneys who are still testing it in the background. It's not a perfect product yet. There's a lot of space for us to grow with it. It's been 12 months now of tech meetings and investor pitches and giving demos to trademark attorneys. Like, it's its own part-time job that's absorbing so much of my time, resources, expenses. And we're in a good place, but I see that the adventure is nowhere near over. This is a marathon. In order for this to really go where I want it to go, we need to keep building. I need to keep marketing. I'm going to this not tech conference. It's a trademark attorney conference in Georgia where all these trademark attorneys from around the world are coming. And I'm hosting a booth there to exhibit this new platform and introduce it to all these trademark attorneys. So this whole move has been, it's been risky. It's been exhausting. And we have so much more to go with it. But I know that to see it through, I need to keep moving. So I guess that's my story of boldness as of today. It's been at the forefront of my mind every day for like a year.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. And I could see scary too, but so exciting. And I could tell how excited you are when you speak about it. And I could see how it can really change a lot for attorneys and clients alike. So I wish you all the best. Congratulations on what you've done so far. And I will definitely love to have you come and tell us more about it as you continue on that journey as well. Thank you so much. And I just heard all this excitement and it had me thinking when it comes to building, we also sometimes find a lot of struggles along the way. We touched on that a little bit. Your law firm and now this the new line that you have with AI. What are some of the struggles that you have faced?
It is really hard to build any business. I think there's a quote from Elon Musk that building a business is like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. Everyone's journey might be different. It might not always be that dark, but you're facing so much uncertainty. There's so much work you need to put in to win every inch. There's so many setbacks. There's so many stressful days when you might just want to exit and bail. Like I've certainly woken up and had moments where I was like, man, I wish a year ago I had taken that tech money and like built a new bathroom. I could be in that bathroom right now. But deep down, I know that is not what I want to be doing. I am really proud of what we built and we need to keep moving forward. But I mean, like the types of setbacks you can encounter are one, there can be cash limitations. Like my wife she opened up a shop in town recently. She's building her own herbal tea business and she's making money. But the invoices she's getting from her teammates, from her suppliers, from rent, like every single week, it's like, okay, am I going to make enough to pay all these expenses?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we going to need to figure something else out? So I would say if to the extent you can keep your expenses low, which is not possible for every business, but if you can keep your expenses low, that will cut down on that part of the stress. There's going to be product or service setbacks. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to go wrong. Someone is going to have a complaint. And when you hear those complaints, those can dig into you. Like, am I like, should I even be doing this? Am I doing a bad job? Is my product even worth anything? And the answer is usually, hey, you just learned a good piece of feedback. Let's take that in. Let's absorb that. Let's make some improvements. Let's keep going. But when you get that little jab, when you're already stressed out with all the work you put in, that is really tough. So I think those are those are probably some of the bigger stresses. Time is also an issue. We have a family. I need to service all my clients, and then having a lot of people are moonlighting. Like you're going to your job all day long. Now you're at your laptop at night and your kids might be wanting your attention and you feel guilty because they're on screens, but you want to finish this, whatever. So there's a lot. It's a lot to put on yourself.
So, someone going through that right now, what would you tell them? And in addition to that, on the other side of that, what does success look like?
Yeah. So I think one, you want to make sure that whatever business you're getting yourself into is something that you truly believe in and love doing. Because if you're not excited about it, if it's a chore, then when you're going through all that stress, you're probably going to want to bail and you might actually bail and this was all for nothing. So one, make sure that you actually care about what you're doing. Because you need to have a really high pain threshold, I think, just for those hard moments, those uncertainties. You need to have enough shocks to absorb that and keep going. So two is keep going. There's dark moments. My wife was having a really tough time the other day with expenses, and I listened and was there to hear her go through that. And after she went through the existential venting, she said, "Okay, I feel better. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next." So
Mm-hmm.
let yourself vent. Take time for wellness. Meditate. Rest, hydrate, exercise, all those things you're supposed to be doing. That will help calm your nerves while you go through this. Have as much of a sense of humor as you can about this. Like, we only live once. So I think taking it upon yourself to make these exciting, bold moves and take these risks, that's part of life. That's fun. I mean, in 100 years, we'll all be gone and this will all be done. So have fun with it. Have a sense of humor about the chaos and journey that you're going through. And what success can look like, there is so much beauty to entrepreneurship. Every day I wake up and I'm super grateful that I don't need to go rush out the door, put on a suit, commute downtown, go to a high rise, have some boss tell me what my deadlines are for the day, tell me that I need to work late, tell me that I don't get a raise, come home late, miss my kids, and do all this to benefit someone else. Instead, I wake up at home with my kids. We have a slow morning in the backyard with our chickens. I set my own schedule, whether this is going to be a work day or a meetings day or a wellness day. We take our laptops on the road, we travel, we work from all over the world, and no one is telling us what we can or cannot do. Like this journey is entirely ours. So I would not give that up for anything. I'm never going to go back into the workforce. So there's a reason to all the madness. There's a reason people are super enthusiastic about entrepreneurship. It just comes with the hardship. It's a yin yang balance.
Right. We talk about not going back sometimes. And I wonder because we are also generating the jobs as entrepreneurs. So how does that inform what kind of leader you are in your business, and how do you attract the talent, and how do you keep them?
Great question. And that has been one of the biggest learning curves for me. I mean, the first learning curve was like, how do you start a business? How do you find clients? And then as that
Hmm.
grows, the question is, how do you scale? And I think that's not something that's come as easily for me in the sense that I always felt anxiety going to a workplace. I felt anxiety having a boss. And so when I hired someone, I had that in my head. Like, I don't want to instill anxiety on anyone who's working for me. I want them to feel warm and welcome. I want to help train them. I want to give them constructive feedback, help them grow, help them blossom. So I am not a scary boss at all, for better or for worse. So I certainly need to find the right fit of someone who's not going to just take advantage of that, but actually, learn from what the wisdom I have to offer. And I've had a lot of great teammates that we have vibed perfectly with. I've had to learn how to balance that kind of like nurturing leadership position while at the same time making sure that the bottom lines are hit, the deadlines are hit. And I think I am getting better at that. I've had phases where I've had teammates, I've had phases where I've worked by myself, and there's been plenty of times when I'm like, this just works better when it's just me. I don't have to supervise anyone. I don't need to train anyone. It's just all on me. I'll make sure I do everything right. But I do see the value in expanding that team, training someone else, having more eyes and ears, and more crew on deck to help build the mission. So I guess all that to say, it's a struggle. It's something that I'm still learning. I try to foster. I try to help develop our team and do so in a way that feels good for everyone.
I'm speaking to you that does. I mean, I could see that in you. So I'm sure anybody who's working with you, they're very lucky to be doing so. And I'm sure they're having a great experience, just as your clients are. And as one of your clients, I know that I'm having a good experience. So thanks for sharing that with us and the world. And I've been having a lot of fun. I hope that you
Yeah.
you did as well. We have come to the part where we will be closing out. One of the things I usually ask is three practical tips that you would share with someone as they get ready to start. You've covered a lot. You really did throughout the entire conversation. So maybe here, if you just want, if there's anything you think you would like to add, then we can go ahead and do so.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think I hit a lot of the pillars, which are
Mm-hmm.
one, make sure the business is something that you truly love and care about because you're in for a ride with it and you need to love it in order to stick with it. And two, you should take the appropriate steps to make sure you're on solid legal footing. So, register your business, get your contracts together, protect your brand, consult with professionals, consult with friends, make sure you've got your accounting in order, that you've got a reasonable plan for your marketing. One big thing is to celebrate every little inch of victory. There can be so many setbacks, there's so much hardship, there's so much uncertainty. But when you have little wins, like you get a new client or a new follower, or someone comments on your social media post and they're enthusiastic about that, those are all wins. And you need to take a moment to celebrate that so that you can carry that good feeling when the next tough thing happens. So celebrate all those little wins. Trades are fantastic in your early days when you don't necessarily have a lot of capital to put into the company. You might encounter other professionals or providers who you vibe with. So, like if you're a services provider, you could trade your services for their services. And I've done that time and time again. And one, it allows both people to get a lot of value from one another. Two, you're building community because when you're not billing each other and you're just helping each other out, you become friends, and that community can help expand both of your worlds. So I'm a huge fan of service trades, people helping each other out in the trenches. Yeah, and just keep going, have fun with it. I think that's my high level capsule summary.
Yeah, very, very valuable. I'm really glad you're sharing this with us. I'm taking it all in because this is for me as well. So
Thank
I
you.
really, really appreciate that. And we talked a lot about community. And for me, one of the things I'd like to achieve with this podcast is to build community as well. And one of the ways to do so is to connect persons who are listening to persons who've been on the show. So guests like yourself. So we would like to ask if you would want to offer some time. I'm thinking maybe 30 minutes to speak with someone. Maybe the first person, you decide how many people, but at least the first person who reaches out and say, I heard about you through this podcast, you would give them about maybe 30 minutes of your time to talk about business or a law firm or just anything that would help them on their own journey. Is that something you'd be willing to do?
I always do complimentary intakes for anyone who needs help with a new business. So anyone who would like to have a few questions answered or discuss what they need as far as the right legal steps for their business, they are welcome to reach out. They can book a free call on my calendar. We'll set up a time and chat through everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And at this point, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I value your time very much. And I hope that we have you on here again as you continue on your journey. Would love to learn more about it.
Thank you, Clarita. It's been an honor to be here and chat with you. And yeah, if any of your guests need any help, they can check out our website at frameworklaw.com.
Okay. Or actually, would you mind sharing the other places people can actually find you, especially social media handles?
Yeah, absolutely. So on social media, on Instagram, we are at Framework Law Group. TikTok, we're at Framework Law. And then our webpage is frameworklaw.com. And there's plenty of like little videos and legal guides and other tips out there. So feel free to check that out for some more information.
Okay. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you, Karita.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Begin, Build, Blossom, Your Business Journey, a CME Accounting LLC podcast. Please subscribe and be on the lookout for our next episode. If you'd like to share any feedback with us, please email us at podcast@cmeaccountingllc.com.